Hello everyone. Let me first introduce myself. I am Racha Ramadan. I am professor at Cairo University and ERF fellow. I am happy to be moderating this session and discussing three interesting papers on cash transfers, poverty, and energy transition. We'll start with the first paper on harnessing administrative data for impact, the case of Jordan's Unified Cash Transfer Program by Teresa Janz and Zina Nimeh. I hope I'm pronouncing your names correctly. You have 10 minutes.
Okay. Well, thank you all for being here. I guess we stand in between you and the end of this conference. So yeah, happy to see many of you. I'm Teresa. I'm a PhD fellow at the University of Maastricht and Jouni Merit. And together with my co-author Zina, I'm presenting you today our paper, Harnessing Administrative Data for Impact, the case of Jordan's Unified Cash Transfer Program. So I want to set the scene a little bit and tell you in which framework kind of we have done this project. So administrative data that usually comes from interactions between the government and citizens can actually be a huge benefit if used right for research and policymaking to improve socioeconomic outcomes. Administrative data are usually easier to collect, they are readily available, they allow tracking over time, you don't have to sample people over and over again, and they also are advantages because they minimize things like recall bias or social desirability bias. But of course, there is also issues. There's data access issues, data quality issues. And administrative data to this day, they are used maybe to register beneficiaries. They are used maybe for monitoring purposes, but actually for evaluations of programs, that is quite rare. There's quite a research gap, evaluations of social assistance programs, for example. And this is the contribution of our paper. So we evaluate the Unified Cash Transfer Program in Jordan, which is one of the largest national cash transfer programs, in its aim to enhance socioeconomic outcomes amongst beneficiaries. We do this within a relatively short period of time, like February 2020 to 2024. And a secondary objective of this paper is actually, while we are implementing this evaluation, we have also been able to get really deep insights into how the data are used, the administrative data, for the targeting and for data management and so on. So we also developed some recommendations how that can be enhanced. So just a little bit of background about the social assistance landscape in Jordan. Of course, as you all know, Jordan has been facing structural issues over the past decades, external shocks, especially the recent wars as well that come into this period of study, inflation, fiscal pressures, COVID pandemic, etc. And the poverty rate in Jordan has increased over the past years. At the same time, Jordan actually has a long tradition of social assistance programs and subsidies, like the infamous bread subsidy, for example, that were implemented to help people overcome these issues. And the coverage of the poorest is actually quite high in Jordan. So in February 2022, the National Aid Fund, which is the government institution in Jordan that administers cash transfer programs, implemented this unified cash transfer in order to continue reducing poverty and to consolidate the existing programs into one. And this is what we're evaluating, basically. So the program is a poverty-targeted program. It's unconditional. And for targeting, they use a proxy means test developed by the World Bank and the Department of Statistics. It's actually quite important in what we're showing you today, but I don't want to go into details. I don't have time for that, but happy to discuss about the targeting more. It reaches 170,000 beneficiaries, so it's actually quite a large program. A lot of the beneficiaries are children, and the transfers range between 40 to 100 JDs per month per household. It's practically about one time the poverty line. So just to keep that in mind. So now maybe the most interesting part, the data that we use. So we use data from the National Unified Registry, the NUR. That is, in my view, coming from Germany, quite an innovative database, to be honest, because it's a single registry that combines data from different ministries in Jordan. In an ideal scenario, it verifies this data coming from these different institutions and puts it together into one social registry. And then you have data from perhaps the Ministry of Finance on taxes, from the Ministry of Education on children's schooling, etc. And that is used for registering beneficiaries. It's used for applying the targeting formula. It's also used for grievance processes as well. So the National Aid Fund does use this, but also other government entities. And we have access to these data to do the impact evaluation. So it's actually a continuous data collection. So whenever, for example, a household applies to NAF to receive benefits, their information is automatically updated from this database. And then every month, the external data contractor that hosts these data pulls all the data and kind of updates how many beneficiaries there are, which households should be included, and so on. So we have data from 5 of these pulls. They give us a panel data set actually with 5 rounds from the baseline in February 22 until February 24. We have 200,000 households, 42,000 of them are beneficiaries that we can use for this impact evaluation. And then we have information on the demographics, a lot of information actually only on, everything is at the household level kind of, but household heads, employment and income and so on. And some other indicators from the previous Takaful program's PMT model as well. So we use these information mostly as the outcome variables, like what is the program's impact on income, on employment, on assets, on schooling, and so on. And then given the targeting mechanism that it's a PMT model, obviously that is quite a good basis for running a regression discontinuity, because we have this cut of people who have a PMT indicator, let's say below the threshold, they are included, people above are not. And we exploit this discontinuity in the eligibility at the threshold. This has also actually been done in Egypt here for the evaluation of the Takaful program in Egypt. So they have also used the same methodology and some other studies on similar topics as well. So unfortunately, or not unfortunately maybe, but there is some imperfect assignment of treatment. So we use the fuzzy regression discontinuity because some households who are actually eligible don't get the transfer, and the other way around. So then, yeah, I just want to show you quickly here. This is a graph of the targeting variable, let's say, and you can see at the cutoff of 0, there is quite a significant jump in the likelihood of being treated or of receiving the cash transfer. So this is around this cutoff is basically what we're evaluating, what we're comparing households that are just below and just above the threshold. So then in a fuzzy RDD, what we do is we use take-up instead of eligibility, and this kind of like an IV estimation. So in the first stage, we regress treatment on take-up, eligibility on take-up, and then that is used to estimate the outcome variables in the second stage of this equation. And our outcome variables, as I said, is like household income, head employment, head income, assets, and children's schooling, which is basically all the indicators that we could find. And unfortunately, we cannot really evaluate the program's impact on poverty itself, because that is measured in consumption terms by the Department of Statistics, and that is not part of the NUR. So just to say this, unfortunately, we cannot evaluate the impact on poverty. And then we actually do run a lot of different models, a lot of different variations of this. We also have a different methodology as a robustness, but I just want to show you like the main effects, our main estimations. So we actually find that for households who are beneficiaries of this program, their income has decreased over time. And here, the 2 columns that you're seeing is basically the round 4 and 5, which we use because we want to avoid falling into the trap of like income volatility over time. So we just show you both, that you can see that the effects are actually quite similar over time. So we see that there is a decrease in income at the household level. However, household heads are more likely to be working, mostly in irregular employment, to some extent also in business ownership, and somehow there is also some household member, like there's an increase in the number of household members who are working. So this is a bit contradictory, and I will come back to this in a moment. And then in terms of assets, we find that actually there's a negative impact on assets as well. So while non-beneficiaries are perhaps able to improve their asset ownership, this is not the case for beneficiaries. And that's somewhat driven by owning a car, which is a main variable in the PMT. You can debate whether this is a good indicator or not. But yeah, this is what we find. And lastly, there is some positive effects on children's schooling. So we do find that children are more likely to be enrolled in school, but this is not extremely robust, as I will show you in a minute. And then we also find that these effects are larger the household is, which makes sense because we have per capita measures, for example, in the income. So larger households are obviously more like, have like lower per capita incomes. And the effects are also slightly stronger in Amman. But overall, not very large differences. And then I just want to show you like quickly that we did a lot of robustness checks. We switched the baseline even because there were some issues that some people had been removed from the program and others had been included after the baseline. We included households who only were partially treated. That means they didn't get the money for the whole 2 years, but only for, let's say, every other month or so. And all of this is like largely robust, as well as using the different methodology and doing a propensity score matching and difference in difference approach, where we then calculate the average treatment effect on the treated instead of the local average treatment effect, which is done by the regression discontinuity. So what do we find? There is a possible substitution effect. So the household income actually decreases, but household members, especially the head, is working a bit more. That means that the UCT is a reliable income stream, but it substitutes perhaps other household income. Secondly, there is positive effects on the household head's employment in irregular work. And I mean, what we also know from the Jordanian labor market, that there is high unemployment and maybe that the labor supply is simply not sufficient to absorb like higher labor demand. And there is just like the formal sector is quite constrained. And then the program has limited ability to structurally improve assets or like the structural underlying conditions of these households. And then secondly, we conclude that the program is rather like protective in the sense of protecting from short-term income shocks, but not really like promoting sustainable improvements. But we also want to say that this is, of course, only a short-term evaluation. So the time frame perhaps also induces this kind of conclusion. But there is also the question of, does the program perhaps introduce adverse incentive effects, because the local average treatment effect is quite large. So perhaps, I mean, households will never know the exact targeting formula. It's really impossible that they kind of manipulate actively around the threshold, but they might, soon done, but they might know that an improvement in their living situation might make them ineligible in further like years to come. And then, of course, the inadequacy of the transfer is also really an issue. Like 100 JDs, really, that's one person's equivalence of the poverty line. I mean, there's reasons for that, of course, but maybe there is just an inability of the program to really do much. And then I just want to conclude lastly, this is maybe more important for NAF rather than for you, but we also, yeah, we revised carefully the targeting mechanism. This is also actually being done by NAF and the World Bank at the moment, that they're trying to make it, like to improve it. But we also did see that it's very intransparent. There's very many decisions in the targeting formula that are, that could be made a bit easier for not only for beneficiaries to know better what's the criteria, but also for these evaluation purposes. And then also in terms of how the data are stored, we really struggled with the outcome variables. The data are kind of managed externally. Nobody really knows what happens with them. The individual indicators are not stored. So for future monitoring and evaluation purposes, it would be really critical to store these data better, like on a regular basis because they are really rich and they could really enhance not only the targeting and the design of the program, but also evaluations. So yeah, having these data is very good, but its quality is also very important. And that brings me to the end of the presentation. Thank you very much.
So given that I don't think that that's spoken. Okay. So I will comment on each paper apart because even the three papers like are about development, but I couldn't find really storyline to discuss the three together at the end. So I will discuss every paper alone, and I will open the floor for 5 minutes for questions and answers. And I will not go. I will not go into details because I sent already the authors my comments, but just for like motivating the discussion. So first, thank you, Zina and Tina, Teresa and Zina for this interesting paper, for a very important topic, especially in our region. You discussed in very detailed way the data, the social policies implemented in Jordan and how this transfer happened to this universal cash transfer. However, I would prefer to have more discussion about the objective, especially that if you say that the aim of the program to reduce poverty, but in all the indicators you showed, there is no significant impact apart from schooling enrollment, and that on the opposite, it is declining, it is reducing the income of the household. So I would prefer to have elaborating the discussion on this program, especially that I know that we always have this hope that these programs will solve everything. Like in the study you are mentioning about Takaful in Egypt, they measured the impact on food expenditure, education, women empowerment, everything. So, but I think to be specific, to motivate the choice of the outcomes you use in your model, I would prefer to have this in the beginning. Reasons of exclusion, you mentioned briefly, and this affects the sample you are using. And I think this is really important from also policy perspective. If, I mean, what are the reasons, if they are sufficient enough? The Approximations test, what are the variables included? You discuss the inclusion of the car at the end, but I think it was important from the beginning to discuss the assets used in the PMT that would affect the situation of the. You said that there are surprising results, that the beneficiaries have lower income, lower assets. The only advantage is that they are more likely to be employed. What are the channels? Why is this happening? Is this because of the amount of the cash transfer? You talked about the substitution effect. But if I am a policymaker, I would be concerned that the beneficiaries are now more depending on this cash transfer, that they're substituting with other sources of income, which would affect the government budget and limited fiscal space. So I believe more discussion is required of this, explaining the channels, especially that with all the regressions and specifications you are estimating, you have the same results. So this shows the robustness of the result. Then when you decompose by the household size, this for me was kind of confusing because I believe the household size is one of the indicators of PMT. So it's affecting the outcomes and it's affecting also the probability of being chosen for the program. So I don't know if it is the best way to explain. I mean, we all expect that large household size are more likely to be poor, who don't have enough income. But I think also this is not maybe the best variable to explain these results. Same question over and over again, even with a difference in difference result, you have the beneficiaries having lower income resources, especially lower asset or decreasing the assets. This was not clear for me. Are they selling their assets to continue being beneficiaries of the program or not? This, I need more explanation about it. Then, I mean, you motivate in the beginning of the paper the importance of using the administrative data, which I think is very important, especially in our region. When Thomas Piketty used the administrative data, we were found to be one of the most unequal region, but using household survey, it was not the case. So I believe of the importance of the administrative data, but you discuss it in the introduction, in the motivation, and then in the end. But would this type of data affect your results if you have used surveys, the household surveys data? Do you think it will be different, especially that you mentioned that you use income while the main indicator used for the program is expenditure? How can you justify this? Is it better to use both data and compare to see what would be the difference or not. So I think this is really important, especially if the main objective of the program is to reduce poverty, and you found that there is no effect on poverty from a policy perspective. This needs to be more investigated. But thank you again, it's a very interesting paper, and I hope my comments will help you to work on it. So before giving you the floor to respond, if you want, let me open the floor for any question, comment, feedback. Yes, Mike.
Thank you very much. Interesting presentation. My name is Mai Ihab, Institute for Employment Research. And I was wondering on your choice to instrument eligibility using take-up. So maybe if you elaborate on that, why you instrumented using that, and how much you think it's a valid option. And I was wondering if you could look at heterogeneous effects in various regions to see how this effect would differ across the regions. And this is a question out of interest. Is it possible to measure in the administrative data whether they are refugees or natives? And to what extent that would be a good measure if there are variables in the data set? Thank you.
We'll take a couple of questions and then here.
Thank you very much, the two of you. Excellent paper, really, really great. I have a question regarding your comment that the Jordanian program has no promotive effects. I think this conclusion is based on a different publication. And I was wondering if you have made efforts to find out on your data that you had. And the question that I have is perhaps the increase in employment and the decrease in assets an expression of some investments being made? So assets being used for investment into the creation of employment, yeah, which rose employment rates, did not perhaps already raise income to the same level, because at the beginning the income is low, but maybe even the assets have gone for these investments.
Thank you very much for the paper. My name is Shireen Alazzawi. I wanted to actually say something very similar to this, but also just to make sure I got it correctly. Is this income data self-reported? Is that something that is perhaps maybe, intentionally down estimated so that they stay in the program? To what extent have you investigated that? Would love to hear your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Okay, so you have 2 minutes to reply. And I don't know if Zina would like to say something as well.
She can maybe talk to the promoter. But I can answer some of the other questions.
First answer, and then I can follow up.
Thank you very much for all of your questions. That's very nice. So I think a couple of the questions relate to the data and unfortunately the limitations of the data, right? So for example, you said, oh, wouldn't it be better to complement that with survey data? Yes, but the survey data is not available to us. It's not even available to the government itself, to NAF. They have collected a new round, but well. So yeah, we would ideally like to. And as I said, like, yeah, we know that it's really a contradiction. The aim of the program is to reduce poverty, and we cannot even measure that. That's not great, but unfortunately, to the extent that we have been shared the data, we have exploited everything that we could, and that's also the choice of the outcome variables, really. Like anything that we could find, basically, that could work as an outcome variable, we have included. So that's really, unfortunately, the main limitation of this paper. About the channels, yeah, I think probably a survey could highlight more of the channels, but all we have is really this interaction with like the administrative database. And unfortunately, that also means that sometimes these data don't get updated, of course. I mean, what happens if somebody gets an informal job that won't turn up in any of these databases, I guess, from the Ministry of Labor or whatever. It's actually something we struggled with a lot, that some of the variables have very little change over time. in beneficiary households and then in non-beneficiaries as well. And I mean, the NAF obviously also doesn't really care about the non-beneficiaries. So the focus is on getting the validation of the data right for the beneficiaries, but not really for the other part. So some of this is explained really by unfortunately the data that we have. I think, yeah, that maybe for this. And then quickly on some of the short questions, the instrument, this is just how a fuzzy regression discontinuity works, because we have no perfect compliance with the treatment assignment, and that is what the fuzzy RDD does. Basically, it uses take-up instead of, it uses take-up as an instrument and then to run the second regression. The National Aid Fund only caters to Jordanians, so they don't give money to the Syrian refugees or other population groups. So anything that we present here, I should have said that in the presentation, is Jordanian only. And yeah, the income that's self-reported. So there hasn't been a graduation out of the program, at least until the end of our data. So the people who were included, they got money for 2 years, and they have not been kind of resurveyed, or they have not been reapproached to verify the information. So we can say that the fear, let's say, of underreporting is very low, because they have they have applied once and then they got the money, and so far there has been no like exclusion afterwards. And the PMT model is based on this imputed income from the proxy means test. There is some reported income, and yeah, that could be wrong in a sense. But like the critical variable is based on these other variables that are some like 70%, I think, of the information in the NUR is pre-filled from the government database, and then the 30% is just kind of filled in by the beneficiaries and then verified. And then maybe Zina, do you want to answer to the promotive
in 1 minute,
question
please,
about
Zina?
promotive or protective?
Yes, I actually have two very quick comments, and Marcus, I'm very happy to continue this conversation, and thank you for noting it comes from a different place. So maybe for that perspective, it's very important. 3 points I want to make. The first point is that, and maybe answers to our discussant's comment about what is the primary goal. I mean, sometimes we forget that the primary goals of cash transfer programs are really to reduce poverty. And sometimes we try to make them do so much more. But this is why this is interesting. And here kind of jumps me to Marcus's point that I know that transformative development does unfold gradually, but we can't see it, but we have to start to talk about it. And here comes my third point, in that what is very important, and Teresa didn't discuss this for the shortness of time. What is very interesting about NOR and the fact that we're doing this cash transfer evaluation with the government, we did it as researchers, one-on-one. There's no funding of anybody. This is really done for the research value and to help them do this work. NOR is a nationally owned data set. A lot of the work, yes, they get supported by different donors, etc., but it's really a very consistently national effort that we think that starting with this exercise that we're doing, we can eventually perhaps start to see if we can recognize this transformative element by results. But what we're also seeing is that the cash transfer programs, and maybe that's not their goals, but they are not transformative in nature if we actually study their design and what are they supposed to do. But perhaps when we maybe in a year or two follow up on the work that we have done now, because now we've done a lot of the modeling work and how we would follow it up in terms of the data, what can be done, we can actually see exactly these sort of dynamics, and we would have more time to investigate that actually perhaps it is transformative in a different way. And that actually allows us to look at cash transfers in a bit, I would say, more accurate way than even household surveys. Why? Because it is maybe one of our answers to a bit more of a panel type of data, because we do know that we have in ERF, a lot of us and a lot of you work also with the panel labor market surveys, but it is tricky. It is tricky because of the consistency, because of the local ownership, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess the 2-second answer is that it isn't designed to be transformative. It could become transformative, and that's where we want to try to push it. But also maybe ending with the discussant's point in that, again, let's not try to ask too much out of these cash transfer programs, because at the end, their goal is to reduce poverty in the first place. But what are the dynamics? And this is kind of where would be sort of maybe the postdoc work after Teresa would be done. But I think this would be my answer to this. I will stop here.
Thank you, Zina, so much. So now we'll move from poverty to energy transition. A paper titled Powering Minds, Empowering Lives, Understanding the Effects of Energy Poverty, Low Carbon Energy Transition Nexus on Children in MENA by Yasmine Abdelfattah, Vladimir Hlasny, Shireen Alazzawi, Rania, Megally, and Hala Abou-Ali. Yasmine, you have 10 minutes.
So, hi everyone. My name is Yasmine Abdelfattah. I'm an assistant professor in University of Prince Edward Island, Cairo campus. I would love to thank my co-authors, Vlad, Shireen, Rania, and Hala. And definitely, I would like to thank the World Bank office for the chief economist in the Middle East for funding this project and including it in the decarbonization and diversification in the MENA research program. Let me start with an incident that happened to me in March 2022. I was pregnant with my second child. I went to the university as always, and then in the middle of the day, there was so much rain, and they told us you have to evacuate the campus. My campus is in the new capital. Still, the roads are fine, but it's not that safe when it's so much rain and flooding. So we went back home, and it was raining for 3 days in a row. What happened in the third day is that electricity went down. The power plants were not able to function with all that rainfall. And with the electricity went down, we were not able to function because the refrigerators were out. We start to think about what to do with the food. We start to think about how to deal with the kids. And it was a mess. But thank God, the next day, the rainfall was out. We took the food to the neighbors where there was electricity were there. And that happened in Cairo. I wouldn't say in a rural area. So the research that we have done was like, is there a problem with energy poverty in the Middle East, in the MENA? Yes, we have a problem. And the problem would say an energy inequality, because not all the countries, they are facing the same thing. Not all the, I would say, different income groups, even in gender, they face different challenges. And this actually, it impedes socioeconomic development. With numbers, we would say we have 65 million facing energy poverty. And we say lack of access to electricity, while another 60 million, I would say, like example of Lebanon, they would have a long power outage. And this would define 125 million facing energy poverty, which is a big number. Okay, the second part of the project is children. So children in the MENA, some of them, they are facing unsafe living conditions. And this would be in their houses or in the community. And this will affect their eating habits, what's available for them to eat. Even their mothers when they were pregnant with them, did they have adequate food? Are the living conditions affecting the pregnancy? So this all is addressed in the project, in the research, and how, if we talk about women and girls in the Middle East, they take the burden of managing the house. So they are the ones who will be affected more by the energy poverty. That's one side of the story. The other side of the story is we are facing climate change, right? And in this case, like the story that I have said, climate change, we're elevating the energy poverty that's already there. So our research objective was to look at energy poverty from one side, children well-being from one side, energy transition to clean energy, and all of this under what's going on in the atmosphere, the climate change that's happening. And this is very challenging with the microdata and the problems of microdata in the developing countries, especially in the Middle East. So we constructed, and that was the objective, to have a MENA-specific multidimensional energy poverty index. So we used principal components, and we followed what's in the literature by Nas Boomer, which they invented this multidimensional energy poverty index. So we followed their methodology in calculating this. So finally, we want to see the paradigm, how energy poverty, low transition to green energy linked to the children health outcomes. And we're fortunate to have 11 MENA countries in the context of climate change. Okay, so this is this is the MENA, and these are the countries highlighted. And this small tiny thing is Comoros, and we had 24 standardized population health surveys for 11 MENA countries. We got them from different sources. Thanks to Vladimir, he was able to harmonize it all. On the other side, we had data from NUA. It's a high definition resolution satellite images, and we're able to match it with the child birth date, month, and year, and the administrative region that he's in. So that's the matching. Okay, so let's talk about the modified multi-dimensional energy poverty index. We have 3 piles: exposure to non-clean fuels, access to electricity, and finally, low carbon energy transition. So we followed the methodology in the literature, and we did this for each country because the set of variables in each country are somehow different. Okay, so this is the econometric model that we have adopted. We have the children well-being outcome because we have several outcomes: stunting, wasting, mortality, neonatal mortality in each province. So we have the child in a province in certain time. This is our dependent variable. About the independent variable, we had the constructed index that is for each child, and other socioeconomic characteristics, that's the X, and we have the temperature extremes in the province at time point. Okay, so I'm gonna go through the results very fast. Here you can see that we have the stunting and the mortality that's on this side, and we have different variables. One of them is the energy poverty index, the energy poverty principal component. One of the key indicators, the dirty working fuel, and maximum temperature. So so you can see there is a positive trend, and different countries are performing in a different way, but we still have like very clear a positive trend for the energy poverty PCA. We will not say a clear for the extreme temperature, but it's clear for the energy poverty thing. Okay, these are the estimated probability of stunting that obtained from one of our regressions. And here we can say that stunting, the probability of having stunting is positively correlated with the energy poverty in Morocco. So it's here in Morocco. It's in Tunisia. That's one of the key things that we got from these marginal probabilities. So key findings, as I said, multidimensional energy poverty is significantly associated with stunting, as well as infant mortality, neonatal mortality in several Arab countries. It's kind of worrying. So we can say energy poverty and stunting, Morocco, Palestine, and Tunisia. Temperature affected rebirth. So we got, when we connected the data with temperature, we got the average of the past 9 months before birth. So we linked how the situation affects the pregnancy of the mother. So maximum temperature, it's negatively affecting stunting, clear in Egypt and Morocco. Neonatal mortality in Iraq and Palestine. Some basic results would be wealthier families, they have better children health outcomes, again, educational reduced stunting, and rural areas are much vulnerable compared to urban areas. So we need policy intervention in this. So policy recommendation would be clean energy access to the rural areas specific, including solar and wind projects. We need to target poor households and enhance disaster preparedness. So for example, I received an email from the university today that tomorrow it's going to be windy. So it's going to be online. The whole classes will be online. In March 2022, we didn't have this luxury. There was no Microsoft Teams. There was no Zoom. We weren't prepared because that was just before the Corona. So we had the rain, and a couple of days we had the lockdown, the Corona, and just nothing. Schools are not there. Food shortage. Nobody can go out. So disaster preparedness would be a good thing for the MENA region. So it's not only about access, it's about inequality and opportunities for children, And finally, healthcare is a front test for the MENA countries for a better future. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yasmine.
Okay.
Given the number of the co-authors and the amount of information in the paper, I would recommend to split it into 3 papers. This is my point of view. This is my main recommendation. So the paper is motivated in the beginning, and as you present, it's the effect of energy poverty on children malnutrition or children health. Oh, sorry. However, how you presenting, you relate between energy poverty, children health, and transition to clean energy and climate change in a clearer and better way than in the paper. In the paper, when I was reading, especially the introduction and the literature, I was not sure what is the main question of the paper. Is it the impact of energy poverty on children health, or the importance of energy transition to clean energy given climate change, or the impact of climate change on children health? It's really confusing and it's not clear. So, or you specify the channels in a better way, or it's better to split it and focus on one target. Also, the discussion of the literature, I think it lacked a lot of discussion on the MENA region. So I don't know, I'm doing a very tough job, not only because one of the co-authors is my mentor, Professor Hala Abou-Ali, but also because, I can say I'm really not expert of climate, or I'm new in this field, but has this been done before? I know Professor Hala Abou-Ali with Dr. Amira Ayouti conducted another paper where they measured the impact of climate change on children's health. So what is the contribution of this paper? Is only the energy poverty? Are you taking into account these effects or not? And this is related to the model you are using. And this really, by my ignorance, isn't temperature and change in climate change would affect energy poverty? They are going both direction, especially that the paper lacked a discussion of the poverty index, the poverty energy index. It was not clear for me, and still not clear for me, the poverty energy index, the poverty energy principal components analysis. What are these indicators, how they are constructed? Are they used globally, or you are doing special one for the Arab countries? This discussion is really lacking in the paper. In the Jouni and the IV. The IV for me is not clear at all, and it's not clear how it is motivated. Is it what is used in the literature? Have you done tests? Is this also, the paper lack many discussion, especially in the results. As you present, you focus mainly on stunting. In stunting, you dig more, explain the channels, but for wasting, for instance, the discussion was very brief. The discussion of the difference between the different countries. Why in specific countries like African countries in the MENA region, there is negative effect on stunting, not on other countries. So my main recommendation is to explore more the results, explain the channels, and clarify what is the main objective of the paper. But thank you again for this interesting paper. We'll open the floor for questions. We have a couple of minutes. If any, I don't know if there are questions in the Zoom.
Good afternoon. I'm Jinane Jouni, and today I'll be presenting the work with my co-authors, Hassan and Vlad, Poverty Estimation in Data Poor Countries, Parametric Approximation based on limited statistics. I would like to highlight that we have made lots of changes to the paper that we have sent earlier in December. So our motivation starts with the fact that technical inconsistencies in income data set, such as data sources, measurement instruments, different granularity of data, give rise to different statistical approaches to address them. These differences give rise to discrepancies in poverty estimation. So our main question is, to what extent are discrepancy in poverty estimates driven by choice of estimation methods used to address technical inconsistencies in data sets? So our goal is to evaluate how poverty estimates change depending on the mode of data availability by applying different parametric modeling approach. So to do this, we simulated 3 realistic scenarios of data availability. First, we start with limited data conditions where we only have summary statistics, such as the mean income and the Gini coefficient of inequality. Next, we work with the group data where we add information on income and population shares, such as the Lorenz curve. And finally, we work with the raw microdata, which are detailed household income values for all surveyed households. So this slide gives an overview of the main methods used for poverty estimation methods and inequality, and how they are sensitive for data availability. I won't go into details, so we can have time looking at the results, but mainly we have two methods: the non-parametric methods, such as interpolation and kernel density, which we only need to have data points, and the parametric methods, which we should have a prior assumption of the distribution of income data. So we will outline the methodology employed for fitting parametric distributions function to different data income according to data availability. Our database is mainly based on the Luxembourg income study, which offers an exhaustive and generous number of surveys, which span over different geographic region and a country income group. They are really good quality data. They are harmonized and nationally representative. So as we said earlier, data granularity matters a lot for poverty estimation. So when we are working with the regime 1, where we only have aggregated summary statistics such as the mean and the Gini, we can solve linear equations. They are simple equations to estimate the parameters of the distribution. Yet this is only applicable for two parameters distribution, such as the log normal, the FISC, the adjusted Pareto, which we will call new Pareto. When we are working with the group data, 3 and 4 parameter distribution become feasible. So we can estimate the parameter by solving a parameterized Lorenz curve, such as the GQ, the beta Lorenz curve. And when we have the full microdata, we can directly estimate the parameters using maximum likelihood estimation. And to compute poverty, which is our main object, since we have the full microdata from the LIS, we can simply compute the observed poverty rate headcount by simply counting the number of household survey who fall under a certain threshold. And we will compare this observed poverty rate with the one we will compute here using our estimated parameters. We plug in our estimated parameters, and whether in regime 1, 2, 3, into the CDF, and we can obtain the estimated poverty rate, which we will compare with the observed one. We will be using different poverty thresholds, like, for example, 30% of the mean, 50% of the mean, so we can check the robustness of the distribution across different poverty lines. Looking at the results, so we start with the regime 1, where we only have access to limited data, the mean and the Gini. We plot on the y-axis the difference between the observed and the estimated one. On the x-axis, we plot the models. Here we have only 2 parameter models in the first regime. And these are the results for 20% poverty line, which constitute 20% of the mean, 50%, and 80%. So as we can see, the log normal which is in blue, is very accurate, regardless of the poverty line. The FISC distribution is also doing well, while the new Pareto, it doesn't show much stability. So we can see that although aggregate statistics are really limited, but they provide a wealth of information, they reflect the income data effectively because they help mitigate the noise and the outliers that are present in the full microdata. In the second regime, where we have added information of the Lorenz curve in addition to the aggregate statistics, we can see that we have 3 and 4 parameters distributions, such as the GB2, the Sigma Dalla. We can say that the inclusion of additional information enhances parameter estimation for some distribution and thus the accuracy of poverty rates. But we can see that for the FISC distribution, additional information has worsened, because if we can see in the previous slide, for the same, the purple one, the FISC, here it was closer to 0, while in the second regime, we can see that we have present of some extreme values and outliers. In the third regime, flexible models are feasible, like in the second regime, but this increased complexity due to overfitting. We can see like the GB2, which is in gray, it is the most accurate and robust. There was also for the 80%, but it didn't fit in one slide. But it was robust over all poverty line. The SM, which is in green, and the FISC, they produce some outliers. They are good, but they are producing some outliers. The log normal, it's offering a good fit, the blue one, but it worsens at higher poverty lines, so it's better for lower poverty line. The new Pareto, it is showing occasional effectiveness. When it fits well, it does a good job, but it provides also very high outliers. As a summary, we've grouped the result in this table. On the y-axis, we have the percentage, which is the delta, the percentage difference. So, and on the y-axis, we have the models for each regime. So for example, out of all the surveys we had, using in data regime 1, using the log normal, we can see that 49% of the surveys have a difference only between 1 and 3. So the majority of the surveys fall below the 3% difference between the observed and the estimated. While for the new Pareto, most of the surveys have a difference of more than 5%. In the regime 3, we can see that the GB2, the SM, the FISC, most of the observation have low delta, which is good. This table is really important for within regime comparison between the model and the comparison of the same model with different data availability. Yes. As a final say, I would like to say that the log normal is really simple, yet it's really powerful and effectiveness. It doesn't have a risk of overfitting, which is very good for basic poverty estimation. We have seen that group data are really powerful. When we have added the group data, we got really good results. Complex model like the GB2, they excel in capturing inequality and tails, but they need really high quality data because the risk of overfitting and having unstable results. The final point, which is really important, more data doesn't mean better result. As we can see for the GB2 in the summary table, in the summary table for the GB2, we can see in regime 2, when we only have group data, 43% of the household surveys only have a difference, which is less than 0.5%, while when having the full micro data, this percentage falls to 33%. So having full data is not better than having group data. So at the end, I would like only to highlight some strength in our paper. It addressed a critical gap between data availability and the estimation of poverty, and it uses a large data set, which is offered by the LIS, and it has realistic data scenario and methods for estimation poverty across different data constraints. So, done. Thank you.
So thank you, Jinane, so much for the interesting presentation. And from your presentation, I can imagine that the version of the paper I didn't read is much clearer and neat, because a lot of points that were not clear for me when I was reading the initial version I got is clear with the presentation.
Because
so
of the time bound, yeah.
Yeah, so thank you so much. Thank you. So in fact, this paper brought to me a good news and a bad news. The good news that as we are, I think all of us always suffering with data limitations, as we saw in the first paper, and as we all know, the good news that there are different parametric and non-parametric methods we can use to overcome this challenge.
Yeah.
But the bad news for me were two things. That in your on your conclusion or concluding remarks, you said that data limitation is not a challenge, we can solve it, which I think it's...
No, it's that. Okay, if we have the full data, we can use the full data. But if we don't, it's okay. We can use the aggregated statistics, the group data.
Yes, but looking at the different method, especially in regime 2 with FISC or GB2, this means that more data will not get us a good fit.
Yeah.
So
it's
I think
not necessarily. Yeah.
Yes, but I think if the message taken that data availability is not limitation, and for some methods more data will be a challenge. So I just have a concern of this, and I would like you to discuss it more. The other point that on which basis I can use one of these methods. I mean, you show the difference between all of it, but if I have limited data, what would be the best one to use? So should I use the FISC or the GB2 or the new Pareto? Also, you started by the discussions that you are applying on the MENA region using the list data.
No, sorry, it's a global
data. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, but would the difference between regions make a difference on the results? A country with conflict where a lot of countries have limited data, old data, how can we overcome this?
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing, what is the policy implication? I mean...
Okay. There was no policy implications.
Yes.
There were no policy implications. But for the data, the data we have used is a global. But one thing that could answer two questions for you is that we have used measure of goodness of fit. So we were fitting the distributions on the data. If it doesn't fit, we don't count it. So you were asking whether to use the FISC, the new Pareto. You can use any one of them as long as it has a good fit. So for example, when we were comparing, why did I put the percentage of surveys in the summary table? Because in some cases for the log normal, we have used 200 surveys because they all had a good measure of fit, while for the FISC distribution, only 100 surveys had a fit. So the key is in the goodness of it. So you're not limited to only one model. Whether to use, but if you have aggregate statistics or group data or the full data, which one to use, it's not like, okay, if you have the full micro data, which you guarantee it's of a high quality, it doesn't have outlier, it's well cleaned, you can use it. Why not? It's rich, but it is at risk the overfitting. So you always have to look at the goodness of fit measures, and in case we aim to solve the cases where we only have limited data. So the country offices do not share always, like in the case of Lebanon, they have full data, but they won't share it. They only give you summary statistics in a table, and you're bounded to this limited data. So what to do? We can proceed with them, and we have shown that they give comparable results to when we are using the full microdata. So it's not a question to use this or this. You have all the options, but in case you have limited data, it's not like I cannot work. No, you can proceed with it.
Okay, let me ask you one last question before opening the floor, because your two co-authors with Khaled Abu Ismail, they have another work where they discuss that the choice of the methodology of computing data rate or poverty rate, it can affect the story of poverty, and of course it would have policy implication. So this is why I was asking from policy about policy implications, especially that you manage it. I mean, the main objective is to estimate poverty. So this means that the whole story of poverty would be different based on which methodology we are using.
Yes, of course. But here we are using like a basic, simple methodology for poverty estimation. We're not going too much complicated, just for one floor to be able to compare between the models. So, thank you, Jinane. Yeah. Any question?
Any question? Yes.
So much. Hello, everyone. Now, I have a remark and a recommendation and a question. Three in one. Okay, for the remark, I think that the FISC distribution, or we can call it the log logistic distribution. It's a distribution with two parameters. We have the shape parameters and the scale parameters. And when we divide the shape on the scale parameters, we get the rate parameter. Okay, so we don't have different as you write regime 2, regime 3. So it's the same. When we say a logistic distribution with rate parameter is the same logistic distribution with shape and
it's the same.
Different parameterization. But the parameter is the same.
Yes, it is the same.
Okay. Okay, this is the first remark. And the second remark, I think the FISC distribution is well known, that distribution that model income.
Yes, and expenditure. Yes, it is.
Really, it's well known.
And it performed well.
Yeah. But I think that's depend on the data. Sometimes, for example, the log normal distribution perform well.
Yes, of course.
It depends.
That's why I was telling her that before proceeding, we had to make sure that data is fitting well. So if it doesn't fill the FISC, it's not a candidate in the results. To just remove it. So as long as it's fitting, it enters the competition between other models. So it performed well with the log normal. And just want to highlight that the LIS data it contains data from whole the globe, also the MENA region. So there are conflicted countries and low-income countries, but mostly it is for high-income countries, which you expect to have a distribution which has a long tail, like the FISC distribution, not the log normal. That's why the log normal had a better performance at lower poverty lines, while at higher poverty lines, the FISC performed better because it is intended for high income countries. So as you said, it depends also on the data.
Okay, for the remark, I think if you use different estimation techniques, it's better. For example, using the Bayesian estimation technique.
I didn't hear.
Bayesian estimation, because I think you use the MLE technique, the maximum likelihood estimation method, and you know that this method doesn't perform well when we don't have a large data set. It's
data set that
inconsistent.
we
Yeah,
have
the
to-
estimator is inconsistent.
Yeah.
So in this case, I don't know. You can use the Bayesian estimation in order to improve the quality of your estimator. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Jinane, for you and your co-authors. Thank for all the co-authors who were present today or online or in person or were not here at all. Thank for all the interesting papers. Thank for all the audience. And I think you are free to go for the last session of the ERF 31st conference. Thank you so much.